The Pirates of the Caribbean attraction appears in 5 of the 6 known Disney dimensions. Though they are very similar, by highlighting the anomalies we can determine which dimension we are in. In this video we are looking at the differences of Disneyland and Walt Disney World. The main show building at the parks are very different from each other. In Disneyland it is shaped like a diamond. Walt Disney World has a shape that's a bit more reminiscent of Utah. The queues at each of the parks have nothing in common as well. Disneyland's queue starts outdoors beneath an archway and has you follow a chain path leading up a ramp and into a New Orleans mansion. At Disney World, the queue begins undercover and it'll have you entering Castillo del Moro. Once you go inside the mansion at Disneyland, you get a good look at the ride track or the canal. And on the other side there's sort of a preview of the attraction, with a talking parrot, a treasure map, and a Jolly Roger. On the walls you'll find depictions of various pirates. Continuing on, soon you'll pass the threshold that will transport you from a mansion to a dock on the bayou. Before entering the boats, you'll be held back by the queue gates. In Disney World, inside the castle you'll find several armaments as you journey through the queue, such as cannons, muskets, and gunpowder. The level of theming that can be found throughout this queue is quite incredible. In Disney World, the boats board 2 at a time, just like in Disneyland. However, this time, one boat is boarded from the left side as the other is boarded from the right. An additional change is how at Disneyland, the queue gates are made out of wooden planks, when at Disney World you're held back by metal bars. At Disneyland, we start our journey casting off of Lafitte's Landing into the Louisiana Swamp. On the starboard side, there is the Blue Bayou restaurant, which cannot be found at Walt Disney World. If you keep your eye on the sky, you will find that there is a shooting star. As you drift along the path, you will go by boats and some homes with fireflies scattered around. One of the swamp houses has a man on the porch in a rocking chair enjoying a pipe. As the boat follows the current, you pass beneath several brick archways and come upon a talking skull warning you about the journey ahead. Here seems like a good point to check on Walt Disney World for some anomalies. At Disney World, you'll see none of that Louisiana swamp, which kind of makes sense since we already started in the Caribbean at the castle. As we cast off, we can see a ship off in the distance. And this time we start our journey off going right into the cave. After passing beneath the talking skull, we find ourselves going down a waterfall, and then we enter a cave, then we go over another waterfall. Before getting to the other bend, we see a waterfall, and past it is a hole to the outside, and an omen can be seen in the clouds, a skull and crossbones. Off to the right, or the starboard side for you sea dogs, is a grisly scene with skeleton remains, 2 of which are impaled, leaving one pinned to a cave wall. Further ahead we see a squall, and we see a helmsman still trying to weather the storm from beyond the grave. Checking back at Disney World, as we come upon the first show scene, we see a skull in the rocks that was not at Disneyland. This scene is now taking place on the port side instead of starboard. This time, the 3 pirates have all been run through with a sword. The pirate flag no longer has remains over it, nor does this pirate have a pistol. There is no chest present. There is also a wrecked boat in the background, and the pinned pirate has a black hat with a Jolly Roger on it. The helmsman and his wheel are no longer draped with feather bows. He also seems a bit more part of the wreck as he is within this railing, as the other is more off to the side. The scene is also less elevated and even connects to the canal that we are drifting in. The shipwreck is completely different. Just look at the sails. The storm effects have also changed, as the rain has less steep of an angle and the lightning bolts are more static. Now we come across a talking skull in Walt Disney World. This time there are no cross cutlasses and his eyes glow. The dialogue has changed and now mentions Jack Sparrow, and there is a lightning flash that is used for taking a photo. This photo op is not available at Disneyland. However, it is available at other Pirates of the Caribbean rides, so be sure to subscribe so that you can see the differences of other Pirates of the Caribbean attractions in the future. Back at Disneyland, we find more bare bones scenes. We pass a tavern, then get a look at the captain's quarters and a treasure cache. All of these sequences are not present in Walt Disney World. Well, for the most part. There is a scene in the queue at Disney World that parallels part of the display at Disneyland. There is a pair of skeletons playing a game of chess that is very similar to this lively couple here. There are chess pieces that can be seen in Disneyland, but there does not seem to be a chessboard present, and if there is one, it has an hourglass as well as a candle on top of it. Drifting on in a narrow section of the cave, we are told of a curse, and that dead men tell no tales from a disembodied voice.
Of this bewitched treasure.
At the end of the cave is a skeleton holding on to his riches, possibly snared in a trap. As we pass by, flesh has materialized upon him. Once again, you will not find these at Disney World. Upon exiting the cave, you find yourself literally in the middle of a battle between a pirate ship and a fort. Further ahead, you see a dinghy that allowed some pirates to infiltrate the fort. You can even see the silhouette of the confrontation. The pirate ship alone at Walt Disney World is quite different. The deck lamps do not have crossbars, a bit of decorative flourish is missing, and is a slightly different styling. There are no portholes. The paneling under the railing is painted black. The cannon paneling is now yellow. The anchor point for some riggings only goes halfway down this section of wood. There is a silhouette in the window, which also has its own styling changes. Also, the banding is more square and is painted black, and Captain Barbossa has different clothes. The sail in the middle of the mast now has a red cross instead of a black one, and the edges are hemmed nicely.
The men atop the fort opposite of the ship at Walt Disney World do not want to risk their lives peeking up for a better view. On the other side of the canal, the landing boats with the climbing rope is not there, and now there are no pirates to fight, so now there is no longer a silhouette battle.
Because this side of the fort hasn't been invaded yet, the cannons are still firing. Disney World's fort on this side of the bank also seems much smaller, as it's also missing this entire wall with an additional cannon battery atop of it. The next scene shows the pirates have prisoners, and one is currently being interrogated for the whereabouts of Captain Jack Sparrow. A woman comes out and encourages him not to speak, but then she is scared off by a gunshot. Further down, we find that Jack has been within earshot the whole time, hiding with some well-dressed mannequins. As we enter the town, we can see that there are quite a few changes when it comes to the buildings, just by looking at the skyline. Differences in this scene include how this first building no longer seems to be busted into. The window above also no longer has shutters. The boat in the foreground is no longer present. This time, the building that the woman yells down from has 2 windows instead of just the one. Now there's a lot less furniture that is blocking the entrance. The whale also sees a few differences, as the wood no longer seems to be exposed, and the spokes on the pulley are different as well. Disney World seems to have a splashing water effect that isn't present at Disneyland as far as I can tell. This effect was present when Disneyland first opened, but it seems like age has affected this scene quite a bit. The interrogating pirate has a very different look to him, and there's a lot more junk on the ground. The establishment that Jack is hiding by is quite different, and he's also a lot more exposed at Disney World. Also, there's no longer this boat in the foreground. After the town has been ransacked, the pirate has decided to set up an auction to sell some of his ill-gotten goods. As the auctioneer is having trouble with the sale, the red-headed pirate suggests that it's the rum they want. Here we see the pirate with the gun has quite a few wardrobe changes. The window above him also now has a flower bed. The rope used to tie the grandfather clock now has a knot on its face. The flowers on top of the cantina are now more plentiful and are red instead of white. Just above the waterline, the platform is now brick instead of a cobblestone like at Disneyland. As we move further down, we see quite a significant change. The cantina has been closed down, and instead of this worker that was inside the cantina, we now have this other guy that's just standing strangely in the background behind red. This building now has flowers, along with an additional flower bed on the side. Like many of the other pirates, the auctioneer has a slight wardrobe change. Also, this goat is facing a different direction. The set dressing around the steps has been changed quite a bit. As the flowers were kind of around the pirates, they are now further in the background on these steps as well as this balcony. The roof of this building no longer slopes downward. Disney World has some additional lighting elements that are hidden by these baskets. The pesky pirates partaking in the auction have all seen wardrobe changes, and this pillar no longer has an inward impression. As we go beneath the bridge, the pirates have a few minor differences in their look, as well as the bridge, which seems a lot more dirty at Disneyland. Also, the pirates at Disney World have a lantern. In the next area, we find that a lot of people are running around. 3 women are chasing after pirates with makeshift weapons, but one of the pirates is actually chasing after a maiden for a drink from the cantina. A few pirates are getting drunk on the steps, filling up their tankards with some leaky barrels. One pirate is boasting how he has a treasure map with a key, and he thinks that Jack Sparrow will no longer be a problem. Unfortunately for him, he's right behind him, hiding in a barrel. As we come to another bridge, we see a man offering some of his drink to a couple of stray cats. Once again, we find that Disney World has a bit more flora, as this pillar has some nice flowers on it. There's also this new sequence in which a couple of pirates are running off with a chest. This fountain is a little less decorative. This first chase, the woman has a different weapon of choice, as she now has what seems to be like a pitchfork or rake instead of a broom. The chase that was happening upstairs and to the left is no longer there. Now the woman in Disneyland has the pitchfork. The men that were enjoying some free rum are no longer there. Also, the fountain that has the chickens running around it is now mid-level instead of at the top of the stairs. Also, there is now a chicken on top of that fountain. We also find more of those Disney World flowers. There is no longer a cantina sign at the chase taking place upstairs. The woman is also now chasing the pirate with a rolling pin. The pirate with the map and key looks quite a bit different. He also now has a pistol on his waist. The map is now draped over a box instead of his knee. He also no longer has his leg kicked up on a barrel. The dog is now whining on the opposite side. The lantern he is now under is on top of a box instead of connected to a post. Something that I find rather interesting is how at Disneyland it looks like the town was just overgrown by plants. But in Disney World it looks like somebody deliberately used these plants as decoration. In the final chase scene, the woman is now chasing the pirate with a broom instead of a rolling pin. In the scene with the cats, we find that the lantern is not as elevated. The pirate no longer has his foot sticking out. There's a plant now behind the pirate which has flowers. And the reinforced corners of this box are thinner. In the next scene, we find a few pirates playing a shanty with a donkey as well as a dog. Unfortunately, we can't stay and listen to their music because they also set the whole town ablaze. A few of them seem too drunk to realize that they're in mortal peril. One of them is trying to escape, but he's having trouble getting in his boat with all of his loot. One has completely passed out in a sty of pigs. Another is just hanging above, drinking with his parrot. At Disney World, the donkey no longer has a trough with hay that it can eat from. There's no longer archways beneath the band. All the pirates have wardrobe changes, and the loot now has a pick guard. This time, Disneyland has more flowers. The dog has shorter ears, and now his head moves a bit more up and down and less left and right. This scene is rather similar with minor wardrobe changes as well as some differences in set dressing. Fun features I'd like to point out is this bottle sticking out of the man's pocket. This debris, I guess, that's only at Disneyland. The zigzag pattern on this hat is now much larger. There's no longer this vase which was blocking the view at Disneyland. There is now a decorative hole here near the roof. There is no longer fabric draped on this balcony, and the decorative bars beneath the railing are slightly different. As we look to the man in the pigsty, we find that the lantern is now on top of a barrel. There is also a chain that is linked to the wall, and his hat's a little different. The pirate on top of the bridge now has a much longer sash. His leg also has a lot more movement to it. When looking at his hat, we find that the crossbones are underneath the skull now instead of behind it. The parrot is also facing a slightly different direction. As we go deeper into the burning town, we find ourselves in a dungeon that is also on fire. A few burning pillars have fallen from the ceiling. We find 3 cells. One has a skeleton contained, but the other 2 still have pirates trapped inside. Apparently all the guards abandoned their post. There is still hope though, because the keys have been left behind and are currently in the jaws of a dog. At Disney World, there is no longer the 3rd cell that has the skeleton. Also, all the pillars that have fallen from the ceiling are within the cells and none are outside. This cell no longer has a door attached to it, and there's no longer this crossbar. Luckily, the lantern is no longer on a piece of wood because that's how fires can start. The 3 pirates trying to get the key from the dog are arranged slightly differently, and they all have little wardrobe changes, but other than that, they're quite similar. The dog has also seen a little wardrobe change as he seems a bit more spotty now. Back at Disneyland, there's a couple more sequences that can't be found at Disney World, such as this one where we're going beneath the foundations of a building that is falling apart. We even see that the upper floor is actually swaying a little. We then find ourselves in an armory where a couple groups of pirates are fighting over the weapons. This appears to be an uneven fight of 3 versus 1. However, the group of 3 that are on the right seem like they're having a little trouble standing up, so maybe fair fight? With the building on fire and the additional gunfire from the pirates, this is definitely a dangerous situation and we should mosey on out. As we begin to ascend up a waterfall, we find that Captain Jack has found himself a cache of treasure within the armory. On the way up the waterfall, we see some beady green eyes. We then will also hear the disembodied voice of Davy Jones as well as Blackbeard.
Dead men do tell tales, don't they?
The sea's been kind today. Who can tell what dangers lie on tomorrow's time?
At the top of the waterfall, we find ourselves back at Louisiana. Then we see the ride go full circle as we were once in the queue watching people go by who are already on the ride. Future riders are now watching us. We then end our journey on the same dock that we started it. At Disney World, after the jail scene, we go right to Captain Jack enjoying his treasure. Instead of just being a small room next to the armory, in Disney World the treasure is inside its own standalone part of the fort. Additional differences include how Jack's hat is now hanging on his chair instead of on a candlestick. Also, there's the inclusion of Mr. Cotton's parrot. Something that gives Disney World a few bonus points in my opinion is the inclusion of this map with this lock and key. If they look familiar, there's a good reason for that. This is the same map and key that was in possession of this pirate. This is a nice little touch of storytelling that is not present in Disneyland. After the treasure scene, we find ourselves at the unload station, which is not where we started like at Disneyland. Now we ascend up a moving walkway instead of a waterfall. We can hear a disembodied voice of Blackbeard, but no longer Davy Jones.
Who can tell what dangers lie on tomorrow's time? The fates have spoken and guided you well. Till we meet again.
And that concludes this report on Parallel Disney. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. Definitely a little off topic, but I recently got a new Xbox, and I got some digital download codes that I'm not going to use, so here they are, and good luck. Well, I hope you have a good day, and until next time.